One battle after another, the movie event of the year. Walking into this movie, it was impossible to avoid the hype. So many people saying this was not only the movie event of the year, the movie event of the decade, maybe even the movie event of the 21st century. So to say my expectations were high would be an understatement. I walked into one battle after another at my local IMAX, and I could not believe what I was watching. And first, I want to admit something. I saw this movie in Sacramento. The first 30 minutes of this movie is almost exclusively set in the city of Sacramento. It was so jarring to see the city that I've grown up my entire life put to screen in this way. This movie is extremely pulsating. It is riveting. It is fast paced, especially in the first 30 minutes, which is essentially exclusively an action film at that point. And to see Sacramento like whirling through car chases, it is such a cool experience to see on IMAX. Again, I saw it the biggest screen Sacramento has to offer. I suggest anyone who goes checks this film out, do it that way as well. See it on the biggest screen. It looks insanely good. I have to admit, walking out of the movie, I found myself a bit underwhelmed. And maybe it was just due to the hype machine surrounding this movie that I was expecting more. I've come to appreciate it the more and more, and it's certainly been a movie that is on my mind. But I think it is because this movie challenged my expectations in a way that I've now found quite rewarding, but walking out of the theater, I found a bit jarring. To put it simply, one battle after another follows two revolutionaries in the early to mid 2000s. And essentially, we are introduced to these characters on the US-Mexico border, freeing immigrants who are being held by ICE. That is the political tone that this movie strikes from the first second. And that's the political tone that it keeps, especially in the first hour and a half of this film. The film eventually shifts away to it and becomes a more conventional chase movie. But this movie is politically volatile in its beginning and some of its depictions, specifically the experience of California. The term sanctuary city is brought up quite a bit in the first hour or so of this film. We are following far left revolutionaries in this movie. That is the political leaning of this movie, and that is going to upset some people. I think this movie does a very smart job of being able to show some of the flaws of these people, to examining what it means to be a revolutionary and if they're all in it for the right reasons. That is something that I think especially the first 30 minutes of this movie are concerned with, especially as it relates to the Teyana Taylor character, who is the love interest of the Leonardo DiCaprio character in this movie. There is this question asked of if Taylor's character, Beverly Hills, is in it for actual revolution or if she is in it seeking thrills, seeking excitement, that she has this almost lust for what she is able to do and what it possesses out of her. These are questions that the film is fundamentally concerned with, and they affect the entire runtime of this movie. Eventually, this movie does shift away, and we are focusing more on the aftermath of these burned out revolutionaries 15 to 16 years later, and essentially the sins of their past coming back up. And now they have to deal with it. This is especially where we get to know the Leonardo DiCaprio character of Pat. He is this loser father now who is raising Chase Infiniti's character of Willa. And essentially what he and his partner and the other revolutionaries did 16 years ago, they are now coming back to haunt his daughter now. And it is this movie about the sins of the past, what has become, and how we are burdened by the generations that came before us and have forced to take up their battles. We are forced to take up their cross and continue the fights that they couldn't solve. That is something this film is fundamentally focused on. Generations before, how they lead to who we are now, and how we are forced to carry those sins, how we are forced to bear our own cross and carry the weight of the people that came before for us, especially as it comes to parents and children's dynamics. How often the child's life is informed by what the parents did before them. That is inescapable. That is something that this movie is exploring through the Willa character played by Chase Infiniti, who I haven't mentioned much of right now. She is an outstanding performance in this movie. Her job in this movie is to go toe-to-toe with actors such as Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, and Regina Hall. In every scene of this movie, she is face-to-face with one of those three actors, and the fact that she is able to excel in this is an incredible testament to Chase Infiniti's talent. And Leonardo DiCaprio, I don't want to skip him either. Leo is at his best in this movie. This is a dipshit mode from Leonardo DiCaprio that I really dig, when he is really playing into the comedic loser. This is something that he's been quite fascinated with the past few years. I think Rick Dalton in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the best example of this character, but even this is a character that we see in Killers of the Flower Moon. Somebody who just can't get his life together, someone who is a fundamental idiot who makes bad choices one after another. It's something that Leonardo DiCaprio is so comfortable sliding into as a comedy role, but he has so much empathy that you're really rooting for him in this performance. It's one of my favorite Leo performances. You really feel the strain of this character, how this character is kind of a nuisance to live with, especially for the daughter, and eventually is kind of called back into action. I heard Paul Thomas Anderson describe this character as what if the seventh most important revolutionary person on a team is called back into action because he becomes the most important. That is a great way of describing this character and the stakes that it is all in. Now, the reason this movie works, and it's the political nature that I brought up earlier, is by far my favorite performance of the movie. I think it's my favorite character of the movie, and it's the most complicated character. It is Colonel Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, who I have to admit, I'm not always the biggest Sean Penn fan, in real life and as an actor. And in this movie, this is everything that I think Sean Penn does well as an actor, and it's a complete understanding of how to channel that personality of who he is. This is Sean Penn diabolic. This is maybe my favorite performance Sean Penn has ever given. There's Carlito's Way, there's Fast Times, there's so many great performances from him. What he does in one battle after another is what makes this movie great. Essentially, Colonel Lockjaw is this person who is trying to fit into the society that he wants to be a part of. He is enforcing this all-white society that the people above him want to keep, while he himself is having transgressions. And when those transgressions threaten to be released, he has to cover the evidence, whatever it may take. And the thing that's so fascinating about the Lockjaw character is it would be easy to describe him as this militant racist. That's not who the character is. He's far more complicated. He has a far more complicated relation, especially with black bodies, and he has a far more sinister relationship with his own understanding of lust, power, how it is so intertwined in his mind. There is a great introduction to this character that really gets you to understand the psyche of who he is, how much of a freak he is. And that's what Sean Penn is in this movie. In this movie, he is absolute freak mode, and it serves this movie exceptionally well. In this film, Lockjaw is both nemesis and embodiment of cyclical vengeance, yet his desires are far more complicated. It is the erasure of sin on what happened one day where he met these revolutionaries, and there is just this chilling presence that Sean Penn is able to portray in Lockjaw, this chilling precision that captures the seductive allure of authority. Yet the most important element of this character is his power, the fact that he has access to this great power that he uses and abuses. His policing of sanctuary cities and tactics of guerrilla warfare used against the citizens of America, all in service of not the greater good, they're in service of what he believes his greater good is. He is such a self-centered character within this movie. And that is another hot button issue that One Battle After Another does not mince words with. In this film, no law enforcement is altruistic. Their most altruistic elements within this movie is their gleeful participation in the destruction of communities. At their literal worst, they are white supremacists who are clothing themselves in this biblical allegory that they believe of the idea of America being an all-white paradise. These are the levels that we see in this movie. It's quite frightening, and there are certain scenes in this movie where this is also Paul Thomas Anderson getting to use the scope of 170 million, where they come in full force and they wreck shop in upsetting, disturbing ways that tie into what we've been seeing in America the past few months, especially under this current administration. This movie's politics are explosive, and they are about the now, but I think people are mistaking it as a movie about necessarily 2025. It's also a movie about the generation before, and the generation before them, and the generation before them who maybe was a part of the Civil War, and the generation before them, and the generation before them who was a part of the Revolutionary War, and their fights with race, their fights with immigration, etc., to the beginning of human history. And that's what this movie is exploring, that we carry on the battles of the generations before us, weaving together the personal and the systemic, the intimate and the political. One Battle After Another becomes a warning and a testament that history is alive. Accountability is unavoidable. There is a reckoning coming, and there is a reckoning happening that will continue to happen. It is inseparable from our sins. America is our sins. It is the compromises, it is the ambitions of those who came before us that we find ourselves in this situation, which is also interesting to then note that I think this is the arc of Paul Thomas Anderson's career. For the past 2 decades, he is somebody that has been focused in on the past. This is his first contemporary movie since Punch Drunk Love, which was in 2002. So for his past few movies, he's been exploring the history of the 20th century. In There Will Be Blood, we see the intertwining of capitalism and religion. In The Master, where we follow a post-World War II world, we see people searching for belonging amid fractured faith. In Licorice Pizza, his most recent film before this, we are seeing a re-examining of his adolescence. He has been methodically tracing our history to get to his thesis of the 21st century, which I think has been clear through all of his movies. It's power, ambition, and enduring folly that have gotten us to this moment that we find ourselves in. And that's what One Battle After Another is concerned with. It's laying bare the sins, the compromises, and the blind ambitions that got us to this moment in 2025. It is something that is cyclical. It is something that we carry on. I've been very careful to talk about the thematic weight of this movie without actually spoiling the details within the story. I think this movie is best experienced unfolding in front of you in the theaters. The few things that I do want to mention are some of the technical components of the movie. The Johnny Greenwood score is that score. It really keeps the pulse of this movie alive. All the performances are excellent, from small actors who have appeared in other Paul Thomas Anderson works to the biggest of A-list. One guy that I want to shout out in, he has a very crucial role in the halfway point of this movie, is Benicio del Toro. He plays the sensei character. And what I really liked about this character, and that I want you to focus on when you're going into the movie, is notice the revolutionaries versus how Sensei deals with revolution, how he rebels. It's a very different type of rebellion, and I think this movie has ideas of what Sensei is and what he does, and the way that it humanizes what Sensei is doing. It is a fascinating performance that Paul Thomas Anderson and Leo have been very complimentary of, saying that this story came to be because of what Benicio del Toro was able to improvise on set and the ideas that he had for this character. And I think it just ties into the aspects of the beginning of the movie and how it traces through the entirety of the movie. Visually, this movie is gorgeous. There is a third act scene that takes place on a California highway that I've just never seen a car chase sequence filmed this way. It is truly mesmerizing. It reminded me of Hitchcock in many ways. I think the French Connection is a real aspect of this movie as well. I think Westerns is a real influence. I've heard The Searchers thrown around. That's probably a very good comparison for what we see in the third act of this movie. This is Paul Thomas Anderson. Every bell, every whistle, every actor, everything at his disposal, and he makes the most of this opportunity. It is a fascinating film. It is sure to be one of the most talked about films, and I have a feeling it might be our Best Picture winner of this year. I was impressed by this movie. I can't wait to see it again. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I'm hoping sometime soon I'll actually be able to talk spoilers. I'm working on getting a guest because I think it'd be more fun to do it that way. So make sure you like and subscribe to this channel, and thank you for watching this review of One Battle After Another. And for God's sake, go watch this movie now. See it on the biggest format. See it on the biggest screen. Dolby sound, all of it. Treat yourself to it.